Hey gang, hopefully you enjoyed today's show. Captain Sonny Richards, first time on the show. Absolutely fantastic show we had today. You guys and gals are going to learn all about how to do the deep drop thing. And if you don't go do it yourself, obviously this is the guy to call. He's one of Sebastian's best, and you need to give him a shout out there at AA Fishing Charters, Captain Sonny Richards. Hopefully you enjoy the show. Welcome to another edition of Catch a Memory Outdoors right here on WWBC 1510 AM. We appreciate you guys and gals tuning in every Saturday morning to listen to what's going on. Of course, you can get us on our low-power frequencies, 99.9 FM, 94.7 FM, and 100.7 FM in the Central Brevard area here on the Space Coast. And, of course, I want to say good morning to those of you guys and gals out there on Facebook. Give you a big wave. Appreciate y'all tuning in on the Catch a Memory Outdoors Facebook feed as well. So, hopefully you guys and gals will be entertained today because I've got a brand new captain in the studio, Captain Sonny Richards. Good morning,
Good morning. Good morning.
How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing great this morning.
Captain Sonny's been running out of Sebastian for quite some number of years now, and he is bringing a wealth of knowledge for you guys this morning because I've been searching around trying to find somebody who has a good handle and does deep drop fishing on a regular basis. So that's one of the things that we're going to focus on this morning is a little bit of that deep drop action. And hopefully you guys and gals are going to appreciate some of that. We also got some beach action for you, some river action for you, a little hunting action for you, a little shooting action for you, a bunch of stuff coming up. And we're going to be talking about Amendment 2 in the second hour of the show. So you guys and gals are definitely going to want to stick around for that. So grab a cup of coffee. We're going to be here from 7 to 9 a.m. live. And then, of course, you can get us at catchamemory.outdoors.com on that archive tab any other time of the day that you would like to listen to us. Sonny, AA Fishing Charters. Obviously, you're an old school guy like me. And whenever you picked up the yellow pages, what was the first thing you did? You went to
the first one on the list.
First one on the list or the second one on the list? So AA comes before AAA, or I'm not sure, but
yeah.
You're right up there at the top.
I am, yes, absolutely. We derived the name Aquaholics Anonymous.
Oh, okay.
And it gets mixed up with, alcoholics quite a bit, but
right.
It's okay. The name came from the best meetings happen on the water.
Yeah.
Best memories that we create. That's our getaway space.
That's how the whole name of this show came about.
That's it.
Yeah. About catching a memory.
That's it. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, what type of boat are you running?
So we run a WorldCat 26.6, twin 200 Suzuki's. It's a 2000 model, older boat, but she's in great health, great condition, and she gets us out there and back every trip. So we're happy with it. As far as deep dropping goes, a cat boat is hard to beat.
Now, why is that?
Well, when you deep drop off of a V-hull, you're typically dropping off of one side of the boat.
Right.
And if you hook into a fish and bringing it up, what does everybody do? They go to that side of the boat.
Everybody runs that side.
And that a V-hull will list a lot more than a cat boat will.
Oh, definitely. Rocks a lot more.
It does. Yeah. And we do a lot of deep dropping in the Gulf Stream, and the twin hulls, the catamaran, seems to handle the current a lot better and helps us stay positioned where we need.
I was gonna say, what about your positioning? Because in deep dropping, boat positioning is critical.
It is critical. I would say what we found is 80% of your hookup opportunities start at the steering wheel. If you don't handle that boat properly, you're not going to hold bottom properly, so your catch hookup ratio is going to decline.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, well, having a good captain, having a good person at the wheel, obviously
Absolutely.
is because that person is the person you're not casting,
right?
But no matter what type of fishing you're doing, bait placement in the strike zone is the critical part of it. So in the case of a guy out on the flats, he's cast into a tailing redfish or he sees a snook laying under a mangrove. He's got to make that perfect cast. That presentation has to be right. Same thing has to happen in a deep drop scenario, and the guy at the wheel is critical about making that happen.
It is, Captain Jim, and it's also a reference to the guy fishing on the flats. It's basically the same target in the same way, but he may change tactics depending on wind, current, and so forth. And the same thing applies to deep dropping. You have a lot of things that can influence how that bait sticks to the bottom, how it holds. It could be thermoclines, it could be tide changes or speed difference in the current, mid-level versus bottom, and also on the surface.
Yeah, that's one of the things that you really don't think about as an inshore fishing guy, let's say, is that when you get out into deeper waters, the current on top may be going at a different speed than the current on the bottom, or it may actually be going in a different direction than than the current. The top current versus the bottom current. They may be opposing one another or askew of one another.
Yes.
So that's a great point.
I mean, the perfect day is always a south wind in the Gulf Stream. Going with that Gulf Stream, it's easier to hold position on the boat, easier to hold bottom. But, of course, this is Florida, so not every day is like that.
Right.
You'll get an east wind or a southeast or a west. And, yes, you're right. It conflicts. The current's moving in one direction and wind's moving in the other. So having a good captain at the helm is critical.
So do you ever, speaking of, looking at wind direction, do you ever try to deep drop on a north wind?
Yes, we have.
Really?
We have.
Okay.
We have done that quite a few times. The older I get, the more I try to avoid that. A north wind on the Gulf Stream can get nasty, but we have. And actually, if you learn techniques to handle that, the hookups are much better on a north wind.
Really?
It is. Now, the difference is if your Gulf Stream's moving at 6 miles per hour and your north wind's blowing at 15, of course, your drift of the boat is going to be different from the drift of the bait.
Oh, much different.
So those are the things you have to calculate and fight against. But in the same sense, if you have a 6 mile an hour Gulf Stream and a 10 to 15 mile an hour south wind, your boat may overtake your bait.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different things to calculate when deep dropping.
What is the most critical part about the boat to bait relationship? Is you want to be as vertical as possible, or
right.
Is there a certain angle that you say, okay, at a 15-degree angle, 30-degree angle, 45-degree angle, I feel like it's a better presentation?
So
or does that change from day to day?
It does. We try, the golden rule is try to maintain a straight vertical line at the boat. And of course, as that line goes down and the Gulf Stream catches that line, it's going to put a big bow in it.
It's going to do something.
I try to explain to clients, I said, you think your bait's straight down, but it's not. It's way up there in front of us on the bottom. And there are times when we're drifting, if I want to, if my client can't present that bait and stop it from moving on their own by working the reel, I'll work the boat. And I'll do that, and I'll change the direction of the line entering the water in order to stall or speed up the drift of the bait.
Gotcha. So what are the depths that you're primarily targeting out of the Sebastian area?
Out of Sebastian, deep dropping with electrics, we usually run 450 out to 800 feet.
Okay.
And it depends on the species too.
I was going to say 450 to 550 is what, Golden Edge and...
Well, so 450 out to 550, you more have
snowy,
blue line, snowy, and yellow edge.
Yellow edge, okay.
You will get Goldens mixed into that 450 and 500 sometimes, but and the ones you do are typically bigger fish. But,
okay.
But I would say most of the golden tile fishing depths, especially for the average recreational fisherman, is going to be 600 plus, between 6 and 650.
Okay. Now, I have not deep dropped. I've never done a deep drop trip. The deepest I've ever fished is about 300, with the exception of a couple of swordfish, opportunities where we're out in, 1,800.
Right.
So my understanding is that there's not a lot of structure in that 400 to 800 foot depth.
There is not.
And so because it's pretty barren or pretty even in texture, I guess you would say, any little tiny bump is massive. It's kind of like having a sand flat that has no grass on it, but there's a little depression in that sand flat, and that's where the fish want to hang, is around that little teeny. It may only be 4 or 5 inch difference in depth, but that's where the fish want to hang around.
Right. I think shallower waters, you'll have fish that tend to stalk. They hunt.
Mm-hmm.
And the deeper you go, you have fish that are more opportunist. And like you said, the sand and mud ratio, there's very little structure, but you have a slight contour, even 6 inches. Well, that 6 inch contour, as that current flows, will gather and hold squid, shrimp, crabs, dead stuff. And the fish out there, it's so dark on the bottom, of course, they're opportunists. They'll work those little ridge lines in the sand.
Yeah.
And that's where their main food sources come from.
So they're feeding more by scent and maybe
are.
even feel. If they feel there's less current here to fight, then I'll get in that eddy of that,
Yes.
of that little rise or that little whatever. And then the tilefish, my understanding is they're like a big goby or something, and they actually dig a hole.
They do. They have burrows they dig. And we did a lot of research on the Goldens when we first started targeting them. So they'll dig their burrow, and that's their lifetime spot. They don't stay there all the time. They'll go out and venture and feed like most animals do, but they always return to that burrow.
So they're basically a scaled gopher tortoise.
Basically.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. Let me go out and forage a little bit, and then I'll come right back to my hole.
They come right back.
Okay.
Yep. And typically when the researchers have found that on one hole, one burrow, you'll have a male and female.
Interesting.
So they couple up.
Okay. So, now when you're looking at fishing for tilefish in particular, you're wanting to be pretty darn close to the bottom. Those fish
Oh, yes.
aren't going to come up off the bottom at all. With some of the other species, do you find that they will come up a little bit?
Sometimes. We've drifted and actually marked huge schools of squid, and some of those squid are 15 to 20 foot off the bottom. So we've experimented. We've brought our lead up and raised the bait, and actually had some decent hits. The problem is that you will also get those fish that are on top of that squid, and even in 600-700 foot of water, I cannot tell you how many big amberjacks we've hooked into, and we've had some of the weirdest catches. We hooked into a big amberjack one time, and we had a 5-hook system for tiles.
Right.
The amberjack was hooked on the second from bottom, but the leader broke. And the only way we caught him is the extra flowing hook came up and hooked the eye of the mainline swivel. And that's how we brought the amberjack.
Wow, talk about pure luck.
Pure luck. Yep. But you'll find actually a lot of nice amberjack out there if you don't hold bottom and you bring it up 20, 30 feet. A lot of people don't realize it. There's some big boys
Yeah.
riding the top of the tape.
Now, what about, I typically think of, say, cobia as a much, shallower species. Do you ever find them out there on those squid packs or anything, though?
Not that deep.
Not that
No.
deep.
We have
Okay.
we have come across them, 350, but it's rare. Usually,
Yeah, they
when
don't seem to like to go past
Yeah.
like the 200-foot mark.
the only time we found them out there is when there's some kind of floating structure or turtle, something like that. They're swimming with.
With it. Yeah. Interesting. Well, guys and gals, if you want to give us a call, we'd love to hear from you. You can give us a call right here at 321-632-1000. That's our call-in line right here at WWBC. Catch the Memory is going to be right back with Captain Sonny Richards and myself, Jim Ross, right after these messages, so don't go away. This segment of the show is brought to you by the great guys and gals up at Lamb Deck. So stop in at Lamb Deck if you obviously want the best EVA non-skid around, lifetime warranty. Give the guys at Lamb Deck a call. They'll get you tightened up, and they can do any kind of design, any color combination, just about any color combination that you would want to put on your boat. And, of course, they do electronic installs and, things like transducers. One of the things that I thought that was really cool, and it was really hard for me to get somebody to do for me, is my Skeeter came with a black acrylic panel for the dash. Well, I can't tell you, people run screaming away from you whenever you show them that you got a black panel and they need to cut that out so that they can flush mount your electronics. There are so few companies or so few people installers out there that have the proper equipment to cut the acrylic without cracking it. And if they crack it, of course, that's a $400 or $500 piece of acrylic. So
A lot of money.
Yeah, so they don't want to come out of pocket for that. So they just like, no, we don't do that. We don't do that. Lamdeck does. So if you have any kind of electronic install, especially if you're looking at an acrylic type of a flush mount, give those guys and gals up there a call. You're going to really, really like the work they do. They're great job of putting my last boat together, and I really appreciate it. So 321-505-4888, and stop the slipping and sliding and feel a whole lot better when you get back at the end of the day, because that stuff is comfortable to stand on. Sonny Richards is in with me this morning. For those of you guys and gals that are just tuning in, I want to say good morning. Sounds like a couple of guys out there in their deer stands. Mike Delator's even in his deer stand, even after having some reconstructive surgery. I would have liked to have seen that. Mike, hopefully you haven't scared everything in the woods, because hopping up on one leg isn't the quietest way to get to the top of the tree stand. So hopefully that knee of his is bending. I haven't talked to him this week, but hopefully it's bending good and he got up there quietly. Butch McCoy and a couple of the other guys are saying that it's a little windy out there this morning. I can imagine so, 15 to 20 knots and gusting higher. And, a couple of other, who else have we got here? We got somebody else on the line. Let's see here, or in the tree, I should say. Let's see. Oh, David Giovannini is in his tree in South Georgia. So hopefully something comes walking by for you guys this morning, and y'all can, if it's archery season, hopefully you can let some arrows fly. We're going to go to the phone lines. Captain Mike Mann's on the line right now. Good morning, buddy.
Hey, good morning, guys. How are you today?
Doing good, man. What's going on in Mosquito Lagoon this morning?
I am not on the lagoon this morning. My guy called at 9 and something came up with his dad, and he couldn't fish. Of course, I just parked the Harley in the garage after riding for Biketoberfest. I was like, I got to get home early. And then he calls me. I'm like, man, come on.
Well, you can start that thing back up.
I know, but I just didn't want to turn around and ride back up to Daytona at 9 o'clock at night. I was already home and in my PJs. You know what I'm saying?
Smart thing to do.
Yeah. But, I have fished this week, and despite the incredible wind we've had to deal with, the bite has been good. I mean, it's been real good this week, even with a full moon and 20 to 30-mile-an-hour winds.
Mike, did you find that those minors and majors were really critical for you this week? That seemed to be my best asset this week was whenever we had a tide change or a minor or a major.
I did, and because when it shut down, and when it was on, it was on.
Yeah, and when it shut, it was a light switch shut down. It was off.
It was. What I did figure out though, once we weren't able to do it yesterday because we had so much cloud cover in the morning. But on Thursday, once they shut off on the soft plastics, because we had, I think, 4 reds and 2 trout on soft plastics Thursday morning, just staying on leeward sides of islands covered in water.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we got a little sunlight, we could sight fish. They would not touch that anymore. But if you put a shrimp in front of them, they gobbled.
Interesting.
Shrimp on a jig head, the water is still a little bit high. It has been falling all week. I don't know if it's due to the moon or if it's due to the northeast winds or a little combination of both, but the water has been falling. It's not skinny by any means. It's about, normal high.
Yeah.
And, there's still some really clear water. I'm not seeing the grouse I was seeing prior to this hurricane, which has got me a little nervous, but we'll see once we get a little calmer conditions. It looks like next month. I don't see anything other than 15 to 20 for a few days anyway.
Right. Talking about the water height, Mike, you had a really good snook bite going throughout the summer months. Has that transitioned into the fall time now? Are you still chasing them, or was it too windy to fish those kind of snooky areas that you had been fishing?
We've gotten a couple of snook. I think we got 2 snook yesterday by proxy, just because we were covering a deeper water, higher tree line shoreline, And we got red trout and snook off of the same shoreline, just kind of working real slowly down there, throwing paddle tails on the jig head.
Mm-hmm.
And, got the biggest snook we got was probably, I don't know, not anything huge, like 24 inches.
Well, that's
Still
not
a fun snook.
Yeah, I mean, 24-inch snook on light tackle is fun.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I was talking about how they turned onto the shrimp. So I had a father and son both days, Thursday, Friday. Thursday, we're going, the son sees this redfish kind of cruising, throws, hits him right in the head. Well, that redfish does a 180 and then just starts easing off. He didn't think he ate it. Well, his dad pitches up in front of him and almost hits him in the head too. Does the same thing. All of a sudden, I see both their lines start moving. That fish comes up, and he's got both jig heads in his mouth.
That's my favorite kind of fish, dumb and hungry.
Oh, it's great. They go, well, whose is he? I go, he's yours. They go, well, whose? I go, yours.
Yes, both of you.
Yes, both of you guys. I made them both stand there, and one held the tail, one held the head for the photo. But
well, that's good. That's good to hear, though.
Yeah, it's great. If you are out there and you're sight fishing, you're throwing a jig head with shrimp, two things. Don't let them overeat it, but don't pull it away too soon, because what we did find is they were kind of grabbing it and swimming for a little bit with the shrimp in their mouth. And they weren't like slurping it down per se. So give them a few seconds, let that line start moving off, and then,
the snook were doing that Wednesday. They were just kind of holding the finger mullet in their mouth like a cigar,
Yeah.
You'd feel them. You'd feel the thump. You'd kind of try and come tight on it. It would slide out, and you'd reel it up, and you could see where he was only holding the half of the bait. You could see the mash mark on the side of the mullet.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, man, the bait is insane. The amount of bait we've got in the lagoon. The water temperature did drop down quite a bit. Lowest I found was 66 degrees in a couple of places.
Oh, really?
I mean, that's a big change from 84.
Yeah.
So a huge change. It should warm back up. I think it's going to hold around 70, 70 to 74 for the next couple of weeks, which is actually a great temperature in the fall. The water stays clear and the fish stay hungry and happy. Most
definitely. So you've got clear water conditions still, even though the storm whipped it up. I mean, or is it really, really turbid?
Yeah, no, we've got clear water from say Orange Island south. Once you get back in the islands, it's still very clear because you got enough islands to kind of block some of that turbidity. The further north you go, it starts getting very tannic looking. It starts getting almost coffee colored. When I came across the North Causeway Bridge on Thursday, there was a huge, it looked like black coffee and then a little bit greener on the other side. It was a pretty dramatic change, but a lot of that water seems to be flushing out, and still be careful. There's a lot of debris out there.
What is the main input up in that area, Mike? I know there's a couple of creeks that come out of some of those little subdivisions and some of those over 55 communities, but is there some major pipes that are draining the Edgewater and New Smyrna area in that area?
No, I can't figure out. What I think it is because of the wind. We haven't had a real big flushing yet. We've got Spruce Creek, but that flows in mostly north of, dead even with Ponce Inlet.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of overflow, and I haven't been able to get over and check, say, behind the clinkers just because the wind direction has been so strong. This is a time where I like to slide in behind the clinkers and kind of work those, but you can't do it with 20-mile-an-hour east wind.
No, that's not happening.
But I'm really excited about the amount of redfish I saw. We hit one shoreline and we had shots at probably 25, 30 redfish, and just cruising singles and doubles, and they were just kind of easing along. They're all lit up, pumpkin colored. Saw we had a couple tailing since the storm.
No, that's all.
So when I found water that was shallow enough for their tails to come up, or it just happened to be a fish big enough that his tail was able to come up.
Yeah. Well, as that water drops, obviously we were going to see a lot more of that activity because, the shrimp run has been pretty good most of the year, And, anytime that you have shrimp around, they're going to tip on them.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's been a pretty decent hatch of stone crabs. I talked to another captain who got a stone crab trap caught up in his trolling motor, and he had to pull it up to get it loose. And when he pulled it up, said it was slap full of stone crabs, and some of them had claws the size of his fist.
Okay, you gotta like that.
That was hard to let back in the water, wasn't it? He goes, yeah, it was real hard to drop that thing back in the water.
Well, buddy, we're up against our next break. How does we appreciate the Mosquito Lagoon report this morning? How does somebody get a hold of you?
Yeah, believe it or not, I got this whole week available. So you can give me a call at area code 386-295-5991. You can reach me on my website, fatfishguide.com. You can follow me on Instagram, CAPT Mike Mann with 2 N's. And on Facebook, Fat Fish Guide Service. Guys, give me a call. Still some tarpon around, but if you want to get out and do some of that Mosquito Lagoon site fishing, call me. We will get out there and get it done.
All right, brother. Thanks so much for the call this morning, and thanks for that report.
Oh, yeah, and go Dogs, beat Texas.
There you go. All right, thanks, Mikey.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Take care. Gang, we're going to take our next break. When we come back, we got a whole lot more with Captain Sonny Richards and myself, Jim Ross. So don't go away. Catch the memories coming back at you. This segment of the show is brought to you by Sun State Pest Management. And, of course, we've all just, trying to recover from this hurricane. You're out in the yard picking up debris and leaves. And in my case, 250 avocados and, all kinds of stuff that's fallen off of the trees around the place. But one of the things that happened was that fire ants went absolutely berserk in my backyard and started building mounds everywhere. And it's like, what is this? What's going on? So my guy Chad from Sun State Pest Management came out, took care of them, didn't have any problems after he left. So
it's good to have, especially if you have pets and kids.
Yep. So we've got right now we had 3, and now for some reason we have 4 that seem to not be leaving Jack Russell terrorists at the house. And now we're in a foster situation where we've been fostering a dog that's supposed to go to the rescue in South Carolina, but we've had that dog for a month too. We had it just before Helene, the weekend that Helene hit. It was supposed to be transported up. Well, obviously that wasn't going to happen. And then 2 weeks later, it was supposed to happen, and that didn't happen because we just had Milton. So anyway, we've got 5 little hairy terrorists at the house right now. And my wife better be happy that I have a lot of patience, because it's that many dogs. It's an uncontrollable situation. You go from, okay, 1 dog or 2 dog, they listen to you. As soon as you throw the 3rd one in, no, chaos ensues. Sometimes it's organized chaos, but most of the time it's just chaos. And then the 4th one gets in there, and now mayhem. And then the 5th one, you can throw bedlam on top of the mayhem, on top of the chaos. It's an absolutely uncontrollable situation because they pack up. And now all of a sudden they go deaf. They can't hear a word you're saying, And Jack Russells like to bark, by the way, in case you didn't know.
Yes.
So anything that they think that is a perceived, real or perceived, imaginary, threat, they want to bark at. So the house has been loud lately, been very loud. But long story short, we've got a bunch of dogs running around the backyard. We didn't need them getting in the ant mounds. And we finally, had the chance to have Chad come over, take care of the problem. So the dogs are going to be safe. My wife's going to be safe because she has a problem with anaphylactic shock. So standing in ant mounds or getting bit by a bunch of ants from a mound is not good. So anyway, these are the types of things that I've been doing since the hurricane hit. I'm not sure if you guys have been dealing with the same kind of scenario, but if you have, give Sun State Pest Management a call. They're real easy to get a hold of. 800-781-7378. That's 781-7378. Have Chad or one of the other technicians come out. They're going to put the right type of product down for the type of infestation that you have and get rid of your problem really quickly. And the best thing about them is if they don't all die on the first go around, call them back up and say, hey, I need a tune up, and they'll be right back out there and get you tightened up. That's what Sun State does. So give them a call there at Sun State Pest Management. They're a great company, and they really, really can help you guys and gals out. So, Sonny, we were talking about deep dropping, and you were mentioning during the break that there's a potential issue coming up. There's been some murmurings of potentially not allowing people to use electric reels to go deep dropping with. What's creating this nervousness? Because I can tell you're a little nervous about not being able to do this.
I am, Captain Jim, and there's a lot of behind the scenes people involved in fighting some of these regulations that are pushed a lot. The people you'll see at the forefront pushing these are the environmentalists.
Always.
You know, and of course you'll have certain aspects of our government and different agencies behind them, or at least listening to them real closely, because, you know, like it or not, environmentalists make up a big part of our population.
They do.
But
we have to remember there's a difference between an environmentalist and a conservationist. There's a huge distinction there. We are conservationists.
Exactly.
We don't want to overfish a fishery. We want to have a sustainable harvest, but yet environmentalists want you to eat tofu and bean sprouts and no meats at all. And personally, you know, bacon, steak, fish, I'm a carnivore, baby.
Yes.
I love that stuff.
Yeah. So I think it, like a lot of things in this world, the squeaky wheel is the loudest.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where that aspect comes from. But on the flip side, we have a lot of good people fighting for us. The Florida Guides Association, for one. I know a couple of the guys that are on the commission board. They go to Tallahassee.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just an organization that asks you to submit a subscription fee so they can promote themselves. They are actually in those meetings fighting on our behalf. And there's a lot of these regulations that I hear about being pushed that come from them. No one hears about them, and most people don't know they're existing. You know, it wasn't that long ago that they were trying to ban electric reels from deep dropping recreational. The fight was fought. It was almost lost, but thankfully it was stopped before it went too far.
Yeah.
The other thing that was trying to be pushed was minimizing the amount of hooks on a deep drop rig. So typically when you're tile fishing, and we do it too, 4 to 5 hooks. And it isn't so that we can capitalize a fish on every single hook. It's more for scent. You know, you're 600-700 foot deep, so smell down there is key to hookups.
Okay. So before we go any farther with that, you put 5 baited hooks down.
Yes.
How many hooks do typically get bit?
We have had 3 or 4 fish on a line. In order to do that, you've got to know how to feel that fish, get the hook set, and wait. And hopefully you can capitalize on some more.
And you're using circle hooks. Once they're hooked, there's not a very good chance of them getting off. But how many times do you get a full pull? Do you get all 5?
No.
It doesn't happen.
No.
Okay.
No. I'd say
how many times do you get 1?
99% of the time.
Okay.
Yep.
So even though there's 5 hooks on the rig, like think of a sabiki rig. You know, when you drop a sabiki rig down next to, buoy 12 and you're trying to get some greenies or some pilchards, there's 6 or 8 hooks on that rig, but only 2 of them come up with a bait on it. Right. The majority of the time. Every once in a while you'll get a full pull and have one on every hook, but not as often as you just get 1 or 2 or 3 fish.
Right.
Okay.
Right. You know, it's when you commercial long line, you have these guys have multiple hooks on a line, and it stays there. Those lines stay on the bottom for a while, and they have enough time to load those hooks up with fish.
Yeah.
Recreational charter fishing is total opposite.
So in thinking of a bandit rig with a bandit reel, how is that different? Which is what the commercial guys call their gear. How is a bandit rig with a bandit reel different than a recreational guy going out there with a electric Daiwa, Shimano, Lindgren, Pittman, whatever it happens to be? How is that? Is it the soak time?
It is. It's absolutely soak time. The commercial guys, their skill levels are a lot on that boat, how they work that equipment. You know, I won't take anything away from those guys. They're skilled.
Oh, they're very skilled.
They're very good at what they do. Recreational side is you're more specific, pinpointed in certain locations versus working a quarter-mile area. And it's I'd say recreational. It's like any fishing. You know, you're watching that rod. You're being very attentive to what's happening at your rod tip.
As opposed to just putting 5 baits down and saying, okay, in 15 minutes I'll pull my baits.
Right.
It's more of a I saw the rod tip bounce. I've got a fish on there. I'm going to pull it up versus I'm just going to watch my watch. And when my time's done, then I'll pull it up and whatever's on it is on it.
Correct.
And in many cases, that longer soak time is going to create a higher yield.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. You know, typically if you do have a soak time, you're going to fill every hook. You know, you'll fill every hook, and it's not always with the intended target fish.
Right.
But you typically fill every hook. There's a lot of charters and commercial on islands, foreign islands, where they've perfected the bounce and drop technique. They'll hook up, they'll pull up 15, 20 feet and drop it back down. And they'll keep doing that until they fill every single hook. And these guys are on hanga boats that you and I probably wouldn't even attempt to put on the water, you know?
Yeah.
And they've perfected it, you know. It's not really a soak time. It's more of absolutely knowing what you're doing.
It's a definite specific technique.
It is.
Yeah. Very interesting. Very interesting. So there was a push, though, to take electric reels out of the game.
There was. There was a push to take the electrics out and regulate the rigs used. Those were pushed back. But the attack on deep dropping hasn't stopped. You know, there's a lot of our rights to hunt fish that are under attack right now that most people don't see. They're starting to hear about them more, especially now that it's election season and stuff. Yeah. But right now we're looking at further regulations, possible regulations on our deep drop species. And if that happens, then it's going to damage a lot of charter guys. And, you know, commercial guys will feel it as well.
Yeah, everybody will. Everybody
Absolutely.
will. Well, guys and gals, we're going to take our next break. When we come back, we got a caller on the line, so don't go away. We've got, I think it's Captain Mark Gibson calling in right after these messages. Appreciate you tuning in. This segment of the show is brought to you by Engel Coolers. So if you're looking for a great cooler, stop by engelcoolers.com or your local retailer. They've got all kinds of really cool stuff, from soft-sided to dry boxes to bear-proof to their new Ultralight 60, which is actually a really cool upgrade for those of you guys and gals that have need for a medium-sized cooler. That thing has got some really neat features to it at a really cool price. So check them out at engelcoolers.com, and we appreciate them sponsoring this segment of the show. Captain Sonny Richards and myself, Jim Ross, are going to go right to the phone lines. Captain Mark Gibson's calling in this morning from Ponce Inlet. What's going on up in the Ponce Inlet area this morning, Mark? You got a little wind blowing, or what's going on up there?
You know, this morning the wind's kind of laid down a little bit, but I tell you what, that cold front we had, you know, last week I was sitting out there around the rocks, and it was 80 degrees.
Yeah, it was warm. Well, are you getting the bluefish and the Spanish and the weak fish and those sorts of things, or are they still not here yet?
You always like to, you know, try to fish, and you know, believe it or not, the croakers and the weak fish were off the beach in that dirty, nasty water. And then we were able to come to the tip of the rock, and I mean, I must have caught croakers that were, you saw them, 2 pounds.
Big
There were
ones.
some fat
Yeah, big ones.
you know.
Those are eaters.
those are eaters. And the Jack Crevalles were good. We had a big, pretty good sized bite of the black drum. Black drum come through there like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I had a trip yesterday, and it was just a 3-hour trip because the guy was kind of on the fence. He's like, well, my money. I said, look, I'll cut you a good deal for 3 hours. I said, but that 3-hour trip is 50 shrimp. That's it. Once it's gone, buddy. But I tell you what, the redfish down towards Don Lawton was biting pretty good. The black drum were biting. A little bit of everything was biting, and I'm telling you, that water was so nasty. You probably couldn't even see. If you put your hand in the water about an inch, you couldn't even see it. That's how bad the water was.
Yeah, that water that's draining out of people's yards and off of the streets and out of the out of those stormwater areas is definitely not. It's not the best quality water, that's for sure. Because you guys have had some really, really good water quality for a couple of months now, with it being nice and calm and no rain, and having that nice flush of seawater kind of stay in there. So now that you've got all that freshwater intrusion into your saltwater areas, it's going to take a little bit for it to clean up, for sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind checking, maybe even going by one of these pet stores and buying one of those salt salinities. I would really like to see what the salinity is up towards, the Dunlawton Bridge.
Yeah.
And I'm not real sure what it should be. I think salinity in the water's maybe 30-something%, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but I guarantee it's, and on top of all the other fish, definitely the catfish were on fire. And the stingrays were biting like crazy.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned that you were switching over to shrimp, because Mike Mann was saying that last week that, in the last couple of weeks, finger mullet was where it's at. Same thing for, you guys fishing Canaveral, same thing for guys fishing Sebastian. The mullet runs in full swing. Fish are really crushing the fingerling mullet, the mid-sized mullet. And then all of a sudden, Mike said midweek his bite switched over to shrimp, and you're saying yours sounds like it did the same thing.
It did the same thing. Now, I did throw one. I fished just one popping cork called the Four Brothers. I tell you what, when you jerk on the Four Brothers, it makes a noise. You can probably hear it basically from your house.
Yep.
I threw it yesterday with one shrimp. Everything else was pretty much a mullet, but I threw that shrimp up in those mangroves yesterday, and I had about a 20. He was almost 28 inches on the snook, but he exploded it.
Nice.
Nice. I did have one nice red on a mullet, but everything else is pretty much shrimp. To be honest with you, I mean, I had mullet sitting on the bottom, I had mullet floating on the top, and the only one that hit that mullet was that. But he was a nice 25-inch red. But yeah, everything else seems to be going to shrimp. And the sad thing is, a lot of the places that are getting the shrimp, there's some of these grass shrimp. I don't know where they're coming from, but they're as soft as it could be.
Yeah, the shells aren't very hard on them.
Yeah, no, but it's starting to come back around. I mean, I'll be honest, the last, I think, 4 trips, and I was really unsure about how the fish was going to be. But, Jimmy, I mean, it's been on fire, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Beginning of the week was really good for me. Wednesday, it died way off, and then Thursday and Friday I had offshore trips scheduled. Well, that obviously wasn't happening in my bay boat, so we spent the last 2 days just kind of fixing stuff around the house. Well, buddy, how does somebody get a hold of you if they want to get out there and do some fishing?
Well, you can find me on Facebook, Daytona Beach Fishing Charter /Naughty Diver, or hit me up at 321. I'm sorry, 386-214-1477. So,
Awesome.
Give me a call. I got Sunday open. Somebody just canceled, and let's get out there and have a good time.
Sounds like a plan, brother. Appreciate the call this morning and the
Buddy.
report.
Yes, sir. I'm in the hot tub now, chilling out, watching a little TV. So you guys have a great day.
Take care, buddy. Man, that's interesting. Is that, as much mullet as we have coming down the beach, that a lot of those fish are keying on shrimp again. Something to think about whenever I go back out on Monday morning. Sonny, so we were talking about the deep drop and there's been some attacks on. There's always an attack on a budding fishery. It seems like everybody wants to just squelch anything that goes on with it. The same. we've got guys that are out there trying to do slow pitch jigs and fast pitch jigs and all that, speed jigs, if you will. There's people say, oh, it's too effective. You're catching too many fish. I don't think this is my personal opinion. I don't think that guys with a rod and reel can really overfish a fishery. I just, yes, in some small instances, you may make a pretty good dent in the population, and so maybe the numbers need to be adjusted. But to totally shut a fishery down, in most cases, is not, in my opinion, a very good way to operate. You need to, instead of just saying, hey, let's just stop harvest altogether, you need to do something that changes that. And here's the problem with deep dropping is, how do you not target the fish that's out of season? That's the hard part.
It is.
Do those fish, I mean, let's just say, okay, so tile are out right now. You can't keep tile. Okay, well, but you want to go deep dropping because there's other species to catch. Can you go to different water depths and find different species, or do they move throughout the year? Is there a migration type of a scenario? Like king mackerel are on the 70 to 90 foot reefs at a certain part of the year, but in the summertime they'll come into the beach, So
Absolutely, Captain Jim. So when we target a species, let's say golden tile are closed right now,
okay,
and we want to move in, fish a little shallower for maybe yellow wedge, we'll take those 5-foot rigs, put them up, and we get a lot of our rigs that are 1 or 2 hooks, and we'll drop those for yellow wedge. The reason is yellow wedge and goldens, a lot of times they'll intermingle and they'll battle for food. Golden tile typically come out on top. They seem to be a little more of an aggressive fish.
okay,
So when that happens and we're fishing and we're trying to target only yellow edge, we'll reduce the amount of hooks. That way we can reduce the amount of fish that may
potential bycatch,
barrel trauma. Yeah.
yeah.
The last thing we want to do is bring up 3 or 4 golden tiles when that season's closed.
Right.
Of course
So now in thinking about that, okay, so you get a fish that's out of season. Can you put like a sequelizer or one of those type of devices on them? Can they be saved from 550 or 700 feet?
Well, the scientists say yes. I cannot say for certain.
Yeah.
We have brought up fish before that are out of season at those depths. And unfortunately, the shark problem that exists off our old waters,
Right.
it isn't just in 90 feet. It's out deep too. Not as bad, but it's still out deep. So when you're bringing a fish up, you're trying to get that fish to the surface
Quickly.
that depth. Barrel trauma is extensive.
Oh, yeah.
Extensive damage in that fish. But when we do bring up a fish that's out of season, we will vent and descend that fish. In my opinion, I think the chances of that fish surviving are 10 to 15%. That's it.
Because even
sadly.
once he gets back down there, that the effects that he's just gone through he's going to be dazed and confused, if you will. And
Absolutely.
any predator that's down there can take advantage of that, obviously.
Easy target.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a sad situation.
So along those lines, not having done this very much, but in the cases of, let's just take red snapper as an example. Okay. I think that the red snapper closure, along with many people, we think that the red snapper closure is absolutely ridiculous. And it probably is. It's not just a perception. I think that's probably, you could almost write it as fact. But so I pull up a red snapper, or my customer pulls up a red snapper, and they go, "Oh wow, that's a nice fish. It's a 15-pound red snapper. That's a nice fish, Yeah, well, we can't keep that. We have to put it back in the water. Well, most of the time I'm fishing in relatively shallow water. Okay, so I can put that fish back, and he goes down very easily.
Right.
If I am fishing in 50 or 60 foot of water, I don't even use you just let them go, and they go. I don't even use my descending tool. They just go. In 70, 80, 90 feet now, they start to have a little bit of a problem. And so I use the descending device and put them back down towards the bottom. But like you say, what's the survival rate? In my opinion, and this this is totally my opinion. I look at it and I go, okay, we just caught a red snapper, and it's 15 pounds. If we put this fish back in the water, it may or may not make it. Okay, even the ones that you let go in 50 feet of water, they may or may not make it because there's a lot of sharks.
Yeah.
There's no joke. I mean, there's a lot of sharks. Why can't we take that one fish and put it on ice and then slow troll menhaden around for king mackerel or pull some ballyhoo? Not in my case, but, the average guy that's got a center console, pull ballyhoo around for some dolphin or some wahoo. Why can't you say, okay, we realize that there is an issue with the numbers. The feds are saying that the numbers aren't there, but rather than put that fish down to potentially be eaten, that one fish goes in the box and you stop doing that particular type of fishing. Now, in the case of deep dropping, it's a little more difficult because you're a long way offshore and there ain't a whole lot else to do once you get there. But let's say you drop down, and I guess it boils down to the honor system. You drop down, let's say you pull up 3 golden tiles on your first drop. Oh, dang it, they're out of season. We can't do anything with them. Put them in the box and go do something else.
I agree.
I think personally, I think it's a better way of managing a fishery.
I think the governments are kind of blanket managing right now. So.
Yeah. And once again, it you have to, there's a trust factor there. There's an honesty factor there that, well, not everybody wants to adhere to, unfortunately. So we have to kind of deal with those issues. But I feel like there's got to be a better way than just totally shutting something down completely and they're off limits.
I agree.
It doesn't make any sense to me. Guys and gals, we're going to be right back after this message with a whole nother hour of Catch a Memory right here with myself, Jim Ross, and my special guest, Captain Sonny Richards. We appreciate y'all tuning in every Saturday right here to Catch a Memory Outdoors. We are live for another hour here, and we appreciate you guys and gals that are tuning in. It's interesting. I wonder if anybody in the stand has gotten anything yet, because there's a couple of guys in their stands this morning. Actually, Mike Delator was mentioning it's opening day of gun in Georgia, so they're not out. Not everybody's out there with a stick and a string. So it'll be interesting to see if anybody gets something before the end of the show. My cousin's up in Georgia. Good morning to you. Don the Snake Guy's on this morning. A bunch of other guys. Jay Bowie, Larry Calderon watching from Oak Hill. John Kipp, hope your knee gets better, buddy. John unfortunately had a little mishap, and he's probably going to have some surgery. So best of luck to you on that. But I want to just say good morning to those of you guys and gals that are out there on the Facebook feed. We appreciate you tuning in and watching us as well as listening to us. We're going to go to the phone lines. Who we got on the line? Jeff? Got Captain Jeff Cranick calling in this morning. Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning, guys.
I appreciate you calling in this morning, buddy, because I have been getting inundated with Facebook messages and text messages and phone calls, and things should be simple in our lives, and they're not always simple, especially when it comes to voting for things. So we need to talk a little bit about Amendment 2 and some of the things that are being said about Amendment 2. Now, I know, we have had this discussion quite a bit ourselves, and I've even been very, very, I would say, leery of the wording that is in Amendment 2. And Amendment 2 is your right as a state of Florida resident to hunt and fish in the state of Florida, okay? And the reason that this is coming up is because there are a lot of groups, like you had mentioned earlier, Captain Richard, Captain Sonny, that we have to be careful of, because groups like the Audubon Society or the Sierra Club or PETA or Defenders of the Wildlife, there's a bunch of different organizations out there that are environmentalists that aren't necessarily conservationists. And
Correct.
we need to make sure that there is a clear distinction between being an environmentalist and a conservationist. An environmentalist, generally, if you just want to kind of make a little summary of it, generally wants to leave everything as it was, and don't take or eat any of the animals. Vegetation is acceptable to take and eat. So a lot of the people in the environmental column aren't outdoor people like myself, and like I would say most of our listeners are. We are conservationists. We don't want to deplete a resource. We don't want to damage nature in any way, but we want to have the ability to go catch a fish and bring it home and eat it if we want, or go shrimping, or go out to the woods and shoot a hog or a deer, during those seasons with the applicable type of regulated weaponry that you would use for that particular season, whether it's a gun, a muzzle loader, a crossbow, a compound bow, whatever it happened to be. And the environmentalists are trying to put a slant on Amendment 2, unfortunately, and they're bringing up some things that aren't true. And that's the problem with the advertisements these days. You can blanketly, just flat out blanket lie about something to try to get your side's point across, and there's no checks and balances for it. And it's an unfortunate thing, because here's some of the things for me. My biggest problem with Amendment 2, in my mind, was giving residents of Florida the ability to hunt and fish in traditional methods. And traditional methods, to me, really opens up that's a red flag, can of worms, because does that mean that, hey, we can now go spearfishing for snook? Does that mean that we can now go gigging for redfish? Does that mean that we can now allow gill netting to start happening again? I mean, there's a lot of things when you put traditional fishing methods or for traditional harvest methods out there. There's a lot of things that could potentially happen with this. And
No.
And Jeff,
No.
you and I discussed this, and you have brought up some points that we need to talk about, and the listeners need to be able to know about as well.
First off, I want to give a shout out to Captain Travis Thompson with Gasparilla Charters.
Mm-hmm.
He has gone above and beyond when it comes to this topic, and I can't take any of the credit for the stuff we're talking about this morning. He's done all the legwork, and with my background, both as a guide and a 30-year police officer, I kind of like guns. Okay.
Yeah.
And
understandable.
It's very disappointing. Let me back up a little bit. Back when they were talking about developing the state parks a couple months ago.
Right.
I don't want to say we jumped in bed with the Sierra Club and PETA and stuff like that, but we all felt the same way. But we knew we were kind of laying down with dogs at that point. And as soon as they canceled all those meetings and pushed everything into 2025, within an hour they had turned on us an Amendment 2.
Yeah.
And I told people that was going to happen. Travis told people that was going to happen, and it has happened. And sadly, like you were saying, they are just perpetuating lies, and to the point where the chairman for the commission had to put out an email, very short email, but to the point, that nothing is going to change other than your right to hunt and fish will be protected in Florida, just like it has been for the 23 other states that currently have that amendment. And the wording, I believe it's one of the Carolinas, the wording is verbatim from a couple of these states. And none of the things that the bunny huggers are pushing out there are true.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, from my aspect, I there's an email that was sent out by FWC. It says recently there has been a number of concerns expressed surrounding the Florida's Amendment 2 and how it would affect the net ban. Both our conservation and legal teams have stated that the current language proposed in Amendment 2 does not change or alter the existing net ban or the ability for it to be enforced. And so to me and to many people in the fishing community, that was a huge sigh of relief to see that coming directly from an email from the Florida Wildlife Conservation Commission. But there's other things out there, Jeff, like you say, the Sierra Club is talking about. Amendment 2 will impact your private property rights. That's what they're pushing. That's a myth.
I think they're trying to push that this amendment is going to supersede any existing law.
Right.
And that can't happen.
Yeah.
No, it can't. The FWC is constitutionally tasked with taking care of Florida's wildlife and environment and lands, and none of that's going to change. How would the net ban change when it is protected by a Florida amendment?
Yeah. So there's a lot of questions that are going through people's minds based on the lies that are being perpetrated by environmentalist groups. And so
the sad part about it, Jim, is people on our side of the fence are picking up on this and perpetuating all the stuff that they are putting out there.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't take a whole lot of homework to jump on Facebook, to jump on some of these forums, that what they're spewing is not true. I don't get into a lot of internet wars anymore like I did when I was younger, but I've been bounced off a couple of Facebook forums for just posting links to that letter that you just read.
Yeah.
They don't want it out
They
there.
don't
want the truth out there.
Yeah.
And as you know, there would, let's take ducks, for example. If it wasn't for Ducks Unlimited, the largest conservation organization, when it comes to spending money where they say it's going, there wouldn't be ducks now if it wasn't for Ducks Unlimited.
Right.
The Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, the CCA. A lot of this conservationists spend money and put their money where their mouth is, whether it be through fees or the licenses that they buy and the organizations that they support. You don't see what the head guy at DU's making per year versus the Sierra Club or some of these other places. It'd blow your mind.
Yeah, the big difference in the number.
Yes, big difference. But, guys, all the stuff that they're saying is not going to happen. Here's a good one. Impact private property rights.
Yeah.
No, again, in the Florida Constitution, under Article 1, S2, Florida Constitution, corn versus state, your private property is your private property to run as you want. Not the state's, not another amendment. You are protected that way.
Yeah, it's not a power grab by the state to try to get possession of your property.
And what are traditional methods of hunting and fishing? Well, firearm, bow and arrow, rod and reel, those are traditional methods.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's going to change there.
Yeah, there's nothing in Amendment 2 that's going to supersede the net ban. There's nothing in Amendment 2 that traditional methods will bring back animal torture is the way that it's worded. A guy having a hunting dog in Sierra Club's mind is torturing that dog. In a conservationist's mind, it's I've got a highly skilled, highly trained animal that I keep in tip-top shape, and he has a specific duty. No, it's not to sit on the couch and get petted and get bonbons or Cheetos or whatever else you happen to be nibbling on at the time. This is a tool that has a specific task and is highly trained and highly functioning. And it's not a form of torture to make a dog, go hunt up kick up a quail or go track down a deer. That's not torture. That's, in fact, most of the time for the dog, it's fun. So things of that nature are what they're what they're saying. It's really amazing to me that all of the different myths that they are bringing up, and none of it's true, because FWC has rules and regulations in place right now that are going to stay in place, and Amendment 2 doesn't affect them in any way.
Well, you could even go one farther, is a lot of the stuff that they're talking about is already protected with other constitutional amendments.
Mm-hmm.
Or there's a lot of court cases. For every one of that they're putting out, they're distractors. There is actually a court case for, you can go right down the list and cite, Scott versus this or this versus that. Everyone is addressed somewhere out there. Again, Travis Thompson put in a lot of work. If you go to his site, All Florida, those guys break it down right there. And that's where I've been sending everybody that has questions. And it's sad that people like the same mindset as you and I and the rest of the people we hang out with, how they are putting it out there so thick that even guys like you are calling me up having questions.
Yeah. I mean, I called when I first saw the slander ads, if you will. I called Rick Murphy, and Rick is, he knows Governor Scott and a couple of the other governors very, very well. And I'm like, dude, what's this about? What's going on here? What are your contacts in government saying about this? And he says, nope, vote yes on 2. Vote yes on 2. Nothing's going to change. He knows, the head of the FWC. He constantly is in contact with those people, and so it's good that you get that reaffirmation from somebody who has direct contact. He has a personal cell number of one of the senators or one of the governors or one of the heads of the FWC. I also called Rick Riles, who has been with Florida Sportsman Magazine for well over 30 years. Very, very highly acclaimed person in the fishing industry. And he's like, you know what? I said the same thing, but in my contacts all say we're good to go. Yes on 2. Nothing's going to change. It's not going to open up any type of gill netting. It's not going to change anything that we want. So those things are good. So basically, Jeff, we all as conservationists would like to see a yes vote for Amendment 2.
Yes, that's correct. And let me tell you real quick before we get out of here, it's just not the environmentalists that are behind this bill. Believe it or not, a lot of your lobbyists with your construction companies, with the boom we've got going on here, they are kind of fearful about the net loss of land that they're building right now. I mean, look at the parkway out here in Palm Bay.
Mm-hmm.
They've paved over thousands of acres and are putting up thousands of houses. Well, how is Amendment 2, once it passes, going to affect them with the net loss of hunting lands that we're losing?
Right.
It's a stretch, but it's out there.
Gotcha.
I think that's one thing that some of the people like us, when we hear this, like Captain Jeff said, we're a little shell-shocked and we're asking questions, but our right to hunt if like Jeff is saying, if there's no land, we have no right to hunt. We
There's
have
nothing
nothing
to
to
hunt.
hunt.
Yeah.
So this amendment can protect not just our rights, but our children's rights, and make sure that they still have land they can enjoy and hunt.
It doesn't turn into a beige subdivision.
Exactly.
Well, guys and gals, we appreciate your thoughts on this. We'd like to see if you want to jump on the Facebook feed and kick in your thoughts or anything like that. We'd love to hear them. But most of us seem to agree yes on 2 is the way to go.
Yes on 2.
Yes on 2.
Real quick before you go, Jim.
Yes.
Tuesday night from 6 to 8 at the St. John's Water Management District office in Palm Bay is their the RAC meeting coming up. If you've got grievances or want to know what's going on, there's representatives that are presenting what's going on in the basin up here. And if you want a word or you got a concern that wants to be heard, you need to come to these meetings.
Gotcha.
They're open to the public. We've got a good working relationship with the board, and if you don't, my opinion is if you don't show up and you got something to gripe about, it's your fault.
It's your fault
for not coming.
Well, Jeff, thanks so much for the information on this and trying to ease some people's minds out there on Amendment 2. We appreciate the call.
Okay, talk to you later, guys.
Thanks, buddy. Hey, gang, we're going to take a quick pause. When we come back, we got a whole lot more Catch a Memory, so don't go away. We appreciate you tuning in every Saturday right here to Catch a Memory Outdoors. This segment of the show is brought to you by Petrucci Insurance. So if you guys and gals feel like you're paying a little too much for your insurance, or you definitely want to get yourself a rate check, call Petrucci. It's real easy, 321-632-1200, 632-1200. Have them do a rate check for you. Make sure that you're not paying too much money for your boat insurance, your car insurance, your house insurance. And that's what they do. They find you the best deal and the best quality company with the best options for your particular coverage needs. That's what they do every day. So give them a call, Petrucci Insurance, 321-632-1200. We thank them for sponsoring this segment of the show. Real quick, going to do the catch conditions and let you guys and gals know what's going on out there, because it is going to be a little bumpy. We got northeast winds basically 15 to 20 knots from now through probably Monday. Small craft advisories in effect right now as well. Seas inside of 20 miles are about 6 to 8 feet with a dominant period of around 8 seconds. Right now, the Ponce buoy is showing 76 degrees. It's 7 foot at 7 seconds there. The 4-mile buoy out of Canaveral, 76-degree water temp, 4-foot seas with a 7-second period. 20-mile buoy, 80 degrees, 9 foot at 8 seconds. And the 6-mile buoy out of Fort Pierce is 78 degrees, and it's squared off at 8 foot at 8 seconds. So not a whole lot of fun to get out on the ocean. We definitely don't recommend it. If you're going to fish anywhere inside of the lagoons or inside of the inlets, are going to be a whole lot better than outside. That's for sure. For when you can get back out, the western edge of the Gulf Stream is 43 nautical miles out of Ponce, 32 out of Canaveral, and 27 out of Sebastian. And the surf temps look like this. We got Ponce Inlet, 77 degrees. Cocoa Beach is also 77 degrees. And Sebastian Inlet is 78 degrees this morning. Tides look like this. We got a high this morning at 9:44 a.m., a low at 4:05 p.m., and a high again at 10:02 p.m. this evening. In Sebastian, we've got a 9:55 a.m. high, a 4:02 p.m. low, and a 10:03 p.m. high. And remember, the inlet is going to change about 2 3/4 to 3 hours after the actual beach tide. But the best times to get out there and hunt and fish, presented by All About Archery down in Melbourne. We've got a major this afternoon from 2:09 to 4:09 p.m. Now, the minor this morning happens right after the show. So once you get done listening to the show, get out there and make a couple of casts in your backyard pond or run down to the river real quick, 9:23 a.m. to 10:23 a.m. And then this evening from 7:56 p.m. to 8:56 p.m. So we appreciate All About Archery presenting those best times to hunt and fish. Who we got on the line? Captain Blair Wiggins on the line. What's up this morning, buddy?
What is going on, man? I'm headed over to Kissimmee right now to get me a little mud motor for my little layout boat.
Yeah, that looked like a pretty neat little concept that you had going on there.
Yeah, it's be my first little dealio with a layout boat, duck hunting, so it should be fun. I think Crank's excited about these things too. So
Well, tell the listeners out there, you've got, so basically these things look like they look like short, kind of fat versions of a kayak, but you can duck hunt out of them.
yeah, that's kind of. They're very stable. But, they're going to have to be with a mud motor on the back. I'm going to do a long tail, so it goes through the hydraulic good.
Right.
And the spatter dot down there in Three Forks. But yeah, man, they're cool. They lay out. They're real low profile, and yeah, I think it's going to be a game changer, especially out on the river when we do the river ducks.
Yeah, because they'll see a boat. They'll see a boat coming at them, but this thing, if it's just kind of drifting up to them, looks like you ought to be able to get pretty close.
Yeah, that's the concept of it. Plus, you can lay out there right out in the middle of that spatter dot, like in Three Forks down there when them black bellies are flying over, and be done real quick. But yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait for the season to start, man. It's been a while since I really looked forward to it. So, be doing lots of filming. So, anytime you want to come out there and whack some ducks, we'll go get them.
I'm looking forward to it. I want to do a little more than 1 day a year. The last 2 years. Well, 2 years ago I got two days. Last year I got 1 day. So I've had three days of duck hunting, but that's more than I've done the rest of my life. So.
Well, you don't always have to go down there to Broadmoor and Goodwin. We can always go on the outskirts or down the river out Sykes Creek. It's always good over there.
Yep. Well, I'm looking forward to it. I've got to get some more shells so that I'm stocked up on them and make sure that I've got plenty to. Because you know me, I'm okay, but I still need a whole box to go duck hunting with.
Yeah, well, me too. It's fun to kind of shoot sometimes.
Yep, definitely.
And scare them. That's what I always say. I scare them when I miss them.
There you go.
Hey, had a question for your deep drop captain there. Has he noticed any sand shift changes? Any of the shoals moving around? Anything like that over the past couple of storms? Because like I told you when I was out the other day, a couple days after the storm, went up and looked at one of our favorite spots, and it ain't there anymore.
We have. It's more affected, I think, between the 400 to 500 foot range than it is 600 foot out. But we have noticed a little shift. Out of Sebastian, you hit anywhere around 500. You get a mixture of hard bottom and mud. So I think a lot of that mud has moved a little bit and kind of set on top of the rocks or the hard surface.
Interesting. Yeah, we saw around the entrance of Canaveral and then up the beach to the tip of the Cape, there's a lot of sand that shifted in and around the Cape itself. The end of the jetty, North Jetty as an example, was about 3 to 4 feet deep. It was really shoaled in. It's 12 now. It scoured all that out and pushed it up onto the beach. So the beach is getting plenty of sand thrown back up on it.
Yeah,
in that area.
We've had a lot of strong ground swells, out in the ocean off of Sebastian that I think is changing the bottom terrain quite a bit. And inshore, it's more beach replenishment and strong incomings that are changing some of our sandbars and different areas.
So yeah, Blair, sounds like there's a little movement out there.
Oh yeah, there was definitely some movement on north of the tip of the Cape up there, for sure. I mean, you can see it on the side imaging. It's real smooth bottom, and then you get out beyond like where it used to be 15 feet is now like 7 feet deep. And on the bottom machine, it's all nice and smooth, the side imaging, but you get out to where it really wasn't affected much, and you get the ripple effect on the machine. You can see where the sand hadn't changed, but yeah, it definitely looks different up there, especially on the bottom machine. So
it'd be interesting to see. There used to be a wreck that was inside about 200, maybe 300 yards inside of Buoy 4, like due west of Buoy 4. There was a little wreck there, but 15 or so years ago, a couple of hurricanes covered it up. It was 22 feet of water. Well, now it's only 18 feet of water.
Oh, wow.
It'd be interesting to go back in that area. I don't know if I've still got that number for that wreck, but it'd be interesting to see if it's gotten scoured away and that wreck is exposed again. Because I found there's another wreck that's inshore of there that definitely the sand got scoured away from it, because you can see way more of the wreck now than what you could prior to these 2 storms that went by.
Be interesting thing to see.
Yeah.
Have to check them old numbers out and see. That'd be pretty cool if
Yeah,
they showed it back up
I think
again.
we need to go do that. Well, buddy, good luck picking up that mud motor today. I'm looking forward to jumping in one of those layout boats with you and getting out there and doing a little hunting. That'll be fun.
Yeah, man, should be real fun. And clam project, it's getting about that time to start replanting again. I think we're up to about 55 million that we put back into the estuary now, and things are looking good. Hopefully, all the fresh water hadn't done too much damage to them, but it wasn't as much water as we got. Thank goodness the storm was waiting. Unfortunately for the guys up north, but fortunately for the clams, the major part was pretty north. So,
Yeah, definitely. All right, brother. We'll have a safe drive, and we'll talk to you later.
All right, sounds good, Jimmy. Y'all have a great day.
Take care, Blair. Hey, gang, we're going to take our next break. When we come back, we got a whole lot more catching memories, so don't go away. Appreciate you tuning in. This segment of the show, we're going to talk about the Starbright cleaning solutions. And, there's all kinds of different things that Starbright makes, as you guys and gals all know. Capt. Sonny, first time on the show, I haven't had a chance to ask you this before. Do you use Starbright products?
I have.
And which of their products do you prefer?
There is a spray polish that I use. Of course, my boat's a little older, so the gel coat isn't as shiny as she used to be.
Right.
A spray polish that I use from Starbright, and it works wonders. Of course, anybody with a boat that's got a tarnished gel coat, blood stains real quick.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
Starbright definitely keeps me from having to scrub and try to get blood stains out of the gel coat.
That's one of the main things is after you get it clean, they have protective products that you can protect with that makes our jobs easier at the end of the day.
A lot easier.
The other day I was out there, I got a little corrosion buster pin, and I was messing around with a little corrosion buster pin on a couple of little things. And all it is, it's just this little like fiber. It's like little fibers that you can get in, and you can get in these little tight little places that want to corrode, especially little metal places. And you can kind of pick that off of there and get that out, and then put a protective coating back over the top of it to help seal it. So yeah, you're right. Sealing is just as important as cleaning.
It is.
So you guys and gals, stop by your local retailer, pick up some Starbright products. They've got the ultimate buckets. You can pick up ultimate buckets. In fact, that's what Sonny's going to take home with him today, and he's going to have a bucket full of love from the guys and gals there at Starbright. Sonny, we were talking at the beginning of the show about the deep dropping, and you were getting into some specifics about boat positioning and that kind of thing, and you were saying that a lot of guys will come up to you and they'll have questions, and one of the things was we've got GPS enabled trolling motors now on offshore boats. Is that something that you should be using?
Yeah. So we've had a lot of people hit us up, and the biggest complaint is they've been out there for hours and wasted a lot of money without actually capitalizing on what we consider a pretty easy target.
Yeah.
When I start asking questions, and it looks like most of their rigs are okay, and they're good enough to hook up, and then they say, well, we get out there and we drop the trolling motor, and that's when I know they've, that's their first fault. So that Gulf Stream is where you're going to find most of these big fish deep dropping. That trolling motor puts your boat in position, but it it basically takes the control of your line out of your hands. So your bait, your fishing line, everything is vulnerable to the conditions of the current, and you no longer have the ability to control that or actually even know what that thing's doing if it does get to the bottom. So dropping a trolling motor trying to spot lock is definitely a no-go. Managing that helm, the steering wheel, your throttles, and drifting.
Because you want to be on a power drift scenario.
You do. You want to align your drift with the speed drift of your baits as much as possible. If those two are off at any certain degree, then the fish see it. Anything that doesn't look natural to them will shy them away.
Now, what about so the amount of weight? How do you know how as far as your scope is concerned? Obviously, straight up and down is ideal, but how do you know how much weight that you need to put out? Can you tell when you're touching bottom and how much line you have out? You can kind of do a calculation and go, hey, I've got my scope is about right, or my scope's I got too much scope, or I need more weight. Just by the amount of line that you're putting out?
Yes. What we've learned is it's really not how much scope we have out. It's what we see at that rod tip. And knowing your rod, I think, is extremely critical to knowing how you're holding bottom, how that weight is being dragged across the bottom, and when you do get a hit by a fish. We use a lot of Banex products. I use the 3060 Banex rod. I love it. It's got a soft enough tip to show me, to give way to a big fish, and stiff enough to show me the bites. Our rule of thumb on that boat is when in doubt, let it out. If we have a fast current and we say we'll start with 4-pound weight, if we feel bottom,
and let's just quantify 4 pounds in what depth of water?
let's say 600,
Okay,
650.
600, 650. You're
Yep.
using start with 4 pounds.
Yep. Start with 4 pounds, and I've dropped 4 pounds out in 900 feet before too. And the weight calculates what the stream is, how fast the stream's moving, and how the boat's being operated. If we hit bottom with 4-pound weight and that stream's really moving, you'll see it in your rod tip. Your rod tip won't bounce. You won't have that flex in it with the weight being drugged. So you try to drop a little bit more line to accommodate for the Gulf Stream speed. And of course, if during that drift you can't feel bottom, you can't see it, bring it up and try again. Increase your weight to 6
Increase
pounds.
the weight, yeah.
Yeah. Down south, West Palm.
So you don't want to see a static. You want to see it bobbing and bouncing.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay.
When you first drop that weight down, it's going to hit the mud and it's going to sink. And a lot of my clients, when they see that first pull, they think the big fish is on. But the rod bows, as soon as that weight pulls out in the mud, then we get established with our drift, and we can see the rhythm of that weight being drugged.
And you just kind of want it tickling the bottom.
We do.
Not a solid drag.
Not necessarily a solid drag. We've put videos on the line before and sent them down just to see what the weight would do.
Okay.
When you let line out as you're drawing your drift, we don't try to wait 5 minutes and then let out 100 feet. What that creates is a slingshot effect of the weight. Your weight will grab and jump 20 feet across the seabed.
That's not natural at all.
That's not natural. On our camera, we've had Goldens just following that line, and they'll follow it for half a mile just out of curiosity before they bite. But they'll follow it, and if that lead gets slingshotted, they're gone. So what we try to do is what I call stair stepping when we let our line out. We don't wait as long. We let out 10, 15 feet, stop, 10, 15 feet, stop, and we keep doing that until we can see the rhythm of that rod holding bottom.
Okay. And like, what about the size of the line that you're using?
Size of the line is crucial. Out of Sebastian area north, even out of the Cape, you can get away with an 80-pound test pretty well. If you go further south, the Gulf Stream's moving a bit faster, so you'll have to downsize. I've heard of guys running 30 and 40-pound test braid.
Really?
And down there they're running 30-pound braid with a 12-pound weight. So we're fortunate out of Sebastian we can get away with 4 to 6 pounds.
They're probably losing a lot of gear if something gets hung or snagged or
Yes. Yep.
Your weight to strength ratio isn't ideal in that scenario where a 5 or 10 pound weight on 80 pound is a whole lot better ratio. Yeah.
The biggest problem is those guys, especially running a lighter tackle, golden tile will fight all the way to the surface, whereas a grouper will blow up and float. But golden tile, especially if you hook into something that's 15 pounds or bigger, that puts a lot of force on that line. Now, when you're pulling him up from 600 feet, a lot of that force is just transitioned into the bow of the line.
Okay.
So you don't get a lot of shock into that line until you get within that 200 or 300 foot range. That's when the stress comes.
And so do you typically ease back up on the drag just a little bit?
We do. Well,
to compensate for that?
With our setups, we don't have to. The biggest thing, the only time I really adjust my drag is if it's a rough sea condition and the boat is listing back and forth. You don't want that boat the list and pull the fish, and the fish pull against you at the same time.
Yeah.
We've had it happen before, and it'll pull a hook pretty
It's
quick.
kind of like having the tarpon jump and you not bowing to the tarpon. You
Exactly.
actually pulling back against him when he goes airborne. Same scenario. You lose that fish a lot of the time.
Right. Now, flip side is if you have too less drag on a golden tile and he's able to fight that much more, then you run a risk also of a break off or a D-hook losing that fish.
Well, gang, we're going to take our last break of the day. We're going to be right back. We're going to have a whole lot more in depth with Captain Sonny Richards after these messages. This segment of the show is brought to you by Strike Zone down in Melbourne. Stop in the Strike Zone. Check out all the cool stuff that you can get there. Not only can you get all of the fishing stuff for fresh and salt water that you need there, they've also got a couple of hunting supplies in there. So if you're looking for some shot shells or you're looking for a specific caliber to get out and do some deer hunting with, stop in at Strike Zone. Check them out. Tell them you heard about it right here on Catch a Memory Outdoors. Captain Sonny Richards is in. For those of you guys that are just tuning in to the last segment of the show, welcome aboard. We appreciate you tuning in. For those that have been here with us for a while, thank you for sticking around. Sonny, we were talking, rigs and techniques and all of this different stuff. We didn't talk. What are we putting on the hook? I mean, we got to put something on the hook, right?
Yeah. And, Captain Jim, I've tried about everything there is out there. Experimenting is one of the things I love to do when it comes to fishing. Seeing what works and see what doesn't.
Right.
One of the most common baits accessible to most recreational fishermen is going to be squid. Each and every time. And squid works absolutely fantastic. I won't put it down for any reasons. But what I will say is when people are buying baits for deep dropping, buy bigger. If you want to catch big fish out deep, don't just go and get your typical box of East Coast or West Coast squid.
The little lolligos or the little ilex squids. Go ahead and get you a bigger one.
Get you a big one. A lot of shops, especially Strike Zone, they sell the sword squids. Those are good, big 12, 16, 18-inch squids, and they work great. And, a lot of times it depends, too, how you put that bait on the hook. And those are things you can't know until you get out there and you do a drop to see what kind of activity the fish are going to give you. Are they in a short strike method? Are they hungry? Are they just going after that bait and engulfing the whole thing? And that's one of those things, like most fishing cases, you can fish every single day, but it'll change yesterday.
Change every day.
So that's what we do. We'll get out, we'll put our baits on, and sometimes we'll smorgasbord it. We'll mix squid with pogie, frozen pogie. We like to butterfly the pogie, pull the spine out.
Now, do you take the regular Atlantic menhaden, or are you getting the yellowfin menhaden?
The yellowfin.
Yeah, the bigger
yellowfin.
We call what most guys out there are calling shad on the West Coast, turbos on the East Coast is the yellowfin menhaden, and they're much bigger than the Atlantic menhaden.
They are. If we're yellow edge fishing, we'll use the entire bait.
Mm-hmm. Oh, because they've got a huge mouth.
Big mouths. And
they could eat a 2-pound jack crevalle, no problem.
Oh, easy. And we go for golden tile if we want to mix it up and use, pogie instead of squid. We'll just take a 1-inch slice out of the body back to belly and throw it on there. So you're putting plugs down.
Okay.
And it works great. It's a bait that puts out a lot of scent on the bottom.
Now, do you have to worry about your bait spinning and all of that kind of stuff? Because, I mean, when you're if you're fishing for, gag grouper, scamp grouper, mangrove snapper, some of those inshore fish, they'll get a little touchy if your bait isn't quite right. Does that happen farther offshore?
It typically doesn't. It really depends on the rig itself. The Gulf Stream has enough current that it will pull those branch lines away from the main line. A lot of the rigs that we have, we buy from a company in Florida, Line Sided Tackle. Justin Santillo with this company is awesome. He makes some of the best deep drop rigs around. I have some that I bought from him from 6 years ago that I'm still using today.
Wow.
But
the other thing I was thinking about going back to the bait is it's dark down there. They can't see if it's spinning. So scent is more critical than in the overall presentation. The more scent you have, the better versus is it spinning or not spinning.
So it is. Yeah, I mean, when you get your bait on the bottom, and of course all of our rigs have glow strips. We try to hang them on a rocket launcher to let them charge sun charge a little before sending them down. But when the bait gets down on the bottom, you've got to try to visualize how your main line runs through that water, makes a big arch, and runs back to your bait, or to your weight, I'm sorry, and then how those branch lines come out from there.
Okay.
So if you can visualize that and position that boat so that you're not too far behind your bait, if your boat gets too far behind or upstream from the bait, then your main line is going to be right on top of your baits. You want your baits to be in front of your main line, which isn't always easy.
Yeah.
But it's doable.
Now, what about live baits? Do you ever use a live bait scenario?
We do. The one downfall of the live bait out deep is you get one use. When you send that bait down, if you don't get the hit, you don't get a strike, and you want to pull up and reset, by the time you pull up, that fish is dead. It's wasted.
Right.
Wasted bait. Which is probably why we typically stray away from live bait as much as we do. If it was recreational once a month, once every other month, live bait is a good go-to. It survives pretty well on a descent, and it actually attracts. When you do hook up with live bait, you hook up with big fish. If you use squid, there's always a chance you could get something 5 pounds, or you could get something 30.
Right. So the blue line tile what's the average size on the blue line?
The blue lines average that we've seen off of our coast are anywhere from 3 to 6 pounds.
Okay. And then the golden tiles.
Golden tile average, and I'll say an average fish is going to be 8 to 10 pounds.
Okay.
And we've caught, I think our biggest golden tile was 47 pounds.
Wow, that's a monster.
So,
yellow edge.
Yellow edge, your average is, I would say, 12 to 17. And we've had, our biggest was 49 pounds. That's a big, big yellow edge. It took 2 people to hold it, and the guy could have put his head inside the mouth of this thing.
Now, what else are you catching in that 400 to 800 foot depth?
Snowy grouper are the other species that really hit. I do have a spot that I'll never share the location, but there's I'm pretty sure it's a wreck fish. He's taken 4 rigs from me. He hits. When he first hit, I thought it was a bull shark. He hit and just pulled drag on the electric. But over the next 4 or 5 months, it happened 3 more times in the same spot. Yeah. So there's some big things down there on the bottom.
And wreck fish are like Goliaths. They just stay deeper.
They're huge. Yeah. They can get pretty big.
Or what about warsaws? You ever get any big warsaws?
Yes, we get warsaw. We haven't gotten anything huge yet, but every now and then we will pull up a warsaw. That's probably around the 10 or 15 pound range.
Gotcha. So there's a decent variety of fish to deep drop for out there, and going out of Sebastian is obviously a lot closer to get to those fishing grounds than it is going out of Canaveral or out of Ponce, where the guys have got to run much farther. So it's more economical to do that. Real quick, 30 seconds or so. When you're out there, do the dolphins swim up to you? Do you see a wahoo passing by the boat? Do you ever run a pitch rod?
Very rare. The thing I've seen more than anything is swords and marlin.
Actually up.
Oh, yeah.
Up.
Yep.
Yeah.
We've had marlins hit our deep drop rigs numerous times.
Okay.
No,
I was thinking about just on top,
Yeah.
Do you ever have a pitch rod where something swims by the boat?
Mahi. Lots of mahi out there in the stream.
So marlin will hit your deep drops in 4 to 800. Swords are in that shallow?
We seen a sword one day. It's about a 400 to 500 pound sword reach, a couple hundred yards off our boat.
Because you think of those of outside of 1,000.
You think of them way out.
Yeah. Buddy, it has been a pleasure having you on the boat or having you on the show. I'm gonna have to get on the boat with you one of these days and see it with my own eyes and see how to do this, because this has been so fascinating. How does somebody get a hold of you if they want to take you out on a charter and go do this?
So they can look us up on our website, aafishingcharter.com. You have the availability to see the calendar, the trips offered, and also book. Or you could hit us up on phone or text, 772-663-2922.
Awesome. Captain Sonny Richards, hopefully you guys and gals will give him a shout and go out there and do some deep dropping with him. Give him a holler and get hooked up with him. Thanks so much for coming in this morning. It's been a pleasure. And until next week, do exactly what Sonny and I are going to do. Get out there and catch yourselves a memory.